I watched my sister marry my ex-fiancé, knowing I had audio of them together in my bed 3 months before their wedding. But I waited, because revenge is a dish best served at the reception. While everyone saw me as the heartbroken older sister, graciously supporting my younger sister's whirlwind romance, I was actually the architect of the most calculated revenge plot my family would ever witness. I'm Vesper, 28, and I always believed in doing the right thing, being the responsible daughter, the supportive sister. I had my life mapped out with Arlo, my charming Irish fiancé who needed a visa sponsor. I trusted completely and loved deeply, which made the betrayal cut like a knife through my chest. My sister Willa is 25, and she's always lived in my shadow but craved the spotlight. Everything I had, she wanted, but this time she didn't just want what belonged to me, she took it. Willa was our mother's golden child who could do no wrong, the artistic free spirit who never had to work as hard for attention or approval. She felt entitled to take whatever caught her eye, and apparently that included my fiancé. Arlo swept me off my feet 2 years ago with his Irish accent and what seemed like genuine love for my family. He was 30, ambitious, and desperate to stay in America. What I thought was love for my family was actually him calculating his best path to citizenship. He played the part of the devoted boyfriend perfectly, charming my parents at Sunday dinners and making me believe I had found my forever person. Our family dynamics made this betrayal even more devastating. Seren, our mother, always favored Willa's spontaneous nature over my practical approach to life. She would say things like, "Willa just follows her heart," while implying I was too rigid, too planned out. Cade, our father, tried to keep peace, but often stayed quiet when he should have spoken up for me. This family structure meant I knew that even when the truth came out, Mom would find a way to make it my fault. The moment I discovered their affair, instead of confronting them or breaking down, something cold and calculating took over. I realized that immediate confrontation would give them the chance to spin the story, make me look like the jealous, unstable ex who couldn't handle rejection. But if I waited, if I planned, I could expose them when their lies were most public and their escape routes most limited. I spent 3 months playing the role of the supportive sister and gracious ex-fiancé while secretly gathering evidence and planning their downfall. Every family dinner where they sat across from me, every wedding planning session where I helped choose flowers that were supposed to be for my own wedding, every moment when Willa gloated about stealing my life, I was building my case and waiting for the perfect moment to destroy everything they had built on lies. Those 3 months taught me something important about myself. I wasn't the pushover everyone thought I was. I was capable of patience, strategy, and delivering justice in a way that would ensure they never forgot the consequences of betraying my trust and stealing my life. They wanted to play games with my heart and my future. I decided to show them what happens when you underestimate the quiet one who always does the right thing. Growing up, Willa and I were inseparable despite being complete opposites. I was the planner, the one who had her college applications submitted 3 months early and her career path mapped out by sophomore year. Willa was the dreamer, the one who changed her major 4 times and still graduated with a degree in art therapy that made our practical father nervous about her job prospects. Despite our differences, I genuinely loved my little sister and wanted the best for her. The thing about Willa, though, was that she never wanted her own things. She wanted mine. When we were kids, she would ignore her pile of Christmas presents and cry until our parents let her play with whatever I had received. In high school, she dated my ex-boyfriend 2 weeks after we broke up, claiming she was helping me get over him by showing me he wasn't worth my tears. In college, she switched to my sorority after spending months making fun of Greek life, then somehow became social chair while I remained a regular member. I told myself it was just sibling rivalry, that she would grow out of it. I was wrong. 2 years ago, I met Arlo at a marketing conference in Chicago. He was working for a tech startup, charming everyone in the room with stories about growing up in Dublin and his dreams of expanding his company to the American market. When he asked for my number, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. He was handsome in that rugged Irish way, with dark hair that always looked slightly messy and green eyes that seemed to see right through me. Our relationship moved at the perfect pace. He respected my boundaries, remembered small details about my day, and integrated seamlessly into my carefully organized life. 6 months in, I brought him home for Sunday dinner, a family tradition that Mom insisted on maintaining even though Willa rarely showed up and I usually spent the time mediating between my parents. That first dinner, Arlo was magnetic. He complimented Mom's cooking, asked Dad about his accounting work with genuine interest, and when Willa finally showed up an hour late with paint still under her fingernails, he told her that her latest sculpture photos on Instagram were absolutely brilliant. Willa lit up like a Christmas tree. She spent the rest of the evening monopolizing his attention, asking about Ireland and making him laugh with stories about her art school disasters. "Your family is amazing," Arlo told me later that night as we drove back to my apartment. "Especially Willa. She's like the sister I never had, so full of life and creativity. You're lucky to have someone like that to balance out your serious side." I thought it was sweet. I thought it meant he understood my family dynamics and appreciated both of our personalities. I was an idiot. Over the next year and a half, Arlo became a fixture at family gatherings. He never missed a Sunday dinner, always brought flowers for Mom and craft beer for Dad. Willa started showing up more regularly, usually with some crisis that needed discussing or some new project she wanted to show off. Arlo was always encouraging, always ready with advice or compliments. When he proposed last Christmas, he did it at our family's annual holiday party, getting down on one knee in front of everyone while Willa filmed it on her phone and Mom cried happy tears. The ring was perfect, a vintage emerald cut that I had pointed out months earlier at an antique shop. I felt like every piece of my life was finally falling into place. We set the wedding date for the following December, giving us almost a full year to plan everything perfectly. I had Pinterest boards for every detail, vendor appointments scheduled months in advance, and a detailed timeline that accounted for every possible complication. Arlo seemed happy to let me handle the planning while he focused on his visa paperwork and expanding his business. Throughout our engagement, I noticed that Willa seemed more interested in my wedding plans than she had ever been in anything I cared about. She wanted to see every dress I tried on, insisted on coming to cake tastings, and offered opinions on flowers and venues with an enthusiasm that felt excessive even for her. When I mentioned it to Mom, she said I should be grateful to have such a supportive sister. 3 months before our wedding, I was living in a bubble of happiness and anticipation. My dress was altered and hanging in my closet, the venue was booked, the flowers were ordered. Arlo was staying over more frequently as his lease was ending, and we planned to move in together officially after the honeymoon. I trusted him completely. I trusted my sister completely. I trusted everyone except the one person I should have been watching most carefully, myself. Because I was so focused on creating the perfect life that I missed the signs that someone was planning to steal it right out from under me. That bubble was about to burst in the most devastating way possible. The discovery happened on a Tuesday morning in September, 3 months before my wedding. I had left early for a client meeting, but when I arrived at the office, I realized I had forgotten the presentation files on my laptop at home. I drove back to my apartment, expecting it to be empty since Arlo had mentioned going to the gym before work. I unlocked the door quietly, not wanting to wake him if he was still sleeping. As I grabbed my laptop from the kitchen counter, I heard voices coming from my bedroom. My heart stopped when I recognized both of them. Arlo and Willa were talking in hushed tones, and something about their conversation made my blood turn cold. I should have walked in there immediately. I should have confronted them. Instead, some instinct told me to listen first. I crept closer to the hallway, staying hidden behind the wall, and pulled out my phone to record what I was hearing. "She's going to be devastated," Willa was saying, her voice carrying that fake concern she used when she wanted to seem caring. "She'll get over it," Arlo replied, his Irish accent making the cruel words sound almost musical. "Vesper's practical. She'll understand that these things happen, that people can't help who they fall in love with." But her wedding is in 3 months. All those deposits, all that planning. Better now than after we're married and I'm stuck. Besides, this way I don't have to pretend anymore. Do you know how exhausting it is to act interested in someone who color codes her closet and has a 5-year plan written in a spreadsheet? I felt like I was going to vomit. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone, but I kept recording. "When are you going to tell her?" Willa asked. "I'm not. You are. You're going to tell her that you've fallen for me and that I've fallen for you. Make it romantic, like it just happened. She'll blame herself for bringing me around too much, for not seeing the signs. She always blames herself when things go wrong. And then what? Then we wait a few weeks for her to process it, and I'll come to you all heartbroken about hurting her. We'll have a whirlwind romance, get married quickly for my visa situation, and live happily ever after. Willa laughed. Actually laughed. Poor Vesper. She really thought she was getting her fairy tale ending. She'll find someone else eventually, someone who appreciates her need to plan everything down to the minute, someone boring enough to match her energy. I heard movement from the bedroom and realized they were getting up. I grabbed my laptop and ran out of the apartment as quietly as I could, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the recording on my phone, replaying their words in my head. 2 weeks later, Willa called a family meeting. She arrived at Sunday dinner with tears in her eyes and a speech prepared about how she had fallen hopelessly in love with Arlo and how guilty she felt about it. She painted it as a tragic love story, something neither of them could control. I never meant for this to happen, she sobbed to our parents while I sat there in stunned silence. But sometimes love just strikes like lightning. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't tell the truth. Mom immediately went into protection mode, wrapping Willa in her arms and shooting me worried glances. These things happen, sweetheart. No one can help who they love. Arlo showed up an hour later, playing his role perfectly. He looked devastated, apologetic, and hopelessly in love. He gave me this speech about how he never meant to hurt me, how he had tried to fight his feelings for Willa but couldn't deny what was in his heart. "I'll always care about you, Vesper," he said, taking my hands in his, "but I can't marry you knowing I'm in love with someone else. It wouldn't be fair to either of us." The family bought it completely. Dad awkwardly patted my shoulder and mumbled something about how these things work out for the best. Mom started crying about how romantic it was, like something out of a movie. Even Willa's tears seemed genuine to everyone except me. They announced their engagement 6 weeks later. Willa gushed about how Arlo had proposed during a spontaneous weekend trip to Napa, how he told her he couldn't wait another day to make her his wife. They needed to get married quickly, she explained, because of his visa situation. "We're thinking January," Willa said, showing off the ring that looked suspiciously similar to ones I had bookmarked months earlier. "Just a small ceremony, nothing fancy. We don't want to make a big deal about it considering the circumstances." But as the weeks went by, their small ceremony kept growing. Suddenly they needed a venue, a photographer, flowers, a cake. Willa started asking me for advice, claiming she felt terrible about the situation but desperately wanted my support. The worst part was watching my mother plan another daughter's wedding while treating me like I was fragile, broken, something to be handled carefully. The moment that changed everything happened during Willa's dress shopping appointment. She had begged me to come, claiming she needed my honest opinion and that it would help with our healing process. I agreed because I was still playing the role of the supportive sister, but also because I wanted to see just how far she would push this charade. We were at an upscale bridal boutique in downtown, the same one where I had found my dress the year before. Willa tried on gown after gown, each one more elaborate than the last, despite her claims about wanting a simple ceremony. When she emerged from the dressing room in a stunning beaded mermaid gown that cost more than most people's cars, she spun around with tears in her eyes. "This is it," she whispered. "This is the one. What do you think, Vesper?" I stared at her reflection in the three-way mirror, watching her admire herself in a dress that cost $8,000 for a wedding that was supposedly happening because of uncontrollable love. The consultant was gushing about how perfect it looked, how it was meant to be, while Mom dabbed at her eyes with tissues. "It's beautiful," I said, my voice steady. "Very you." That's when Willa made her fatal mistake. She turned to me with that fake, sympathetic expression she had perfected over the years and said, "I hope this isn't too hard for you seeing me in a wedding dress. I know you had your heart set on your perfect day." "Actually," I replied, "I think everything worked out exactly as it should. You look happy, really genuinely happy." She beamed at what she thought was my acceptance of the situation. "I am happy. I know it's complicated, but Arlo and I, we just fit together. We understand each other in a way that's hard to explain. I'm sure you do, I said. You should get the dress. It's perfect for what you're planning. 2 days later, I made my decision. I was sitting in my apartment staring at the recording on my phone when I realized that passive acceptance wasn't enough. They had stolen my life, my future, my family's respect, and they were living in luxury, while I was treated like the tragic figure who needed everyone's pity. They deserved consequences, real ones that matched the magnitude of their betrayal. I started with research. I spent hours online learning about marriage fraud and visa requirements. I discovered that marrying someone primarily for immigration benefits, especially when there was evidence of deception involved, could result in serious legal consequences, including deportation. I contacted a lawyer friend from college who specialized in immigration law, claiming I was asking for a friend who suspected visa fraud. If someone could prove that a marriage was primarily for immigration purposes, especially with evidence of premeditation or fraud, it could definitely impact the foreign national's status, she explained. The burden of proof is high, but if there was clear evidence of deception or a pattern of behavior suggesting the marriage wasn't legitimate, it could lead to visa revocation. Next, I focused on the practical details. I researched the return policy for the bridal boutique where Willa had bought her dress. 30 days, with the original receipt and credit card used for purchase. I had photographed the receipt when she carelessly left it on Mom's kitchen counter, and I knew Arlo's name was on the credit card because she had bragged about him taking care of everything. Then came the technical preparation. I edited the audio recording, removing my own breathing and any sounds that might identify where it was recorded, but keeping every damning word of their conversation. I cleaned up the audio quality and saved multiple copies on different devices. I practiced the timing, figuring out exactly when during the reception it would have maximum impact. The hardest part was perfecting my performance for the next 3 months. I had to attend every wedding planning meeting, every family dinner, every celebration of their love story, while hiding my true intentions. I watched Willa choose flowers that were identical to the ones I had selected for my own wedding. I sat through tastings where she picked the same cake flavors I had wanted. I even helped her choose a venue that was eerily similar to the one Arlo and I had toured together. The breaking point came when she showed me their custom cake topper. It was a replica of the proposal photo Arlo had staged with me at Sunset Point, overlooking the lake, the same location where he had gotten down on one knee and promised me forever. They had recreated our moment, our memory, and turned it into a symbol of their stolen happiness. "Isn't it romantic?" Willa gushed. Arlo suggested it. He said that spot is where he first realized what true love really meant. I smiled and told her it was perfect. Inside, I was calculating exactly how their world was going to crumble. That night, I finalized my plan. I volunteered to help coordinate the reception details, specifically requesting to work with the DJ on the playlist and timing. I wrote a letter to my parents explaining my actions, knowing that the family fallout would be severe but necessary. I prepared my exit strategy and made peace with the fact that some relationships wouldn't survive what I was about to do. They wanted to steal my life and live it better than I ever could. I was about to show them the cost of that theft. The wedding day arrived with perfect January weather, crisp and clear with sunlight streaming through the venue's tall windows. I woke up at 5 a.m, not from nerves, but from anticipation. Today was the day I would finally stop pretending and start delivering justice. I arrived at the venue early under the guise of helping with setup. The DJ, Marcus, was already there testing sound equipment. I had met with him 3 times over the past month, supposedly to coordinate the timeline and music choices. He knew me as the helpful sister who wanted everything to be perfect for Willa's special day. "Morning, Vesper," Marcus called out as I approached his booth. "Ready for the big day?" "Absolutely," I replied, pulling the USB drive from my purse. "I have that special audio message from their college friends who couldn't make it. Remember, it goes on right before the first dance, just like we discussed." Marcus nodded and plugged in the drive, adding it to his playlist. "They're going to love this surprise. You're such a thoughtful sister." If only he knew how thoughtful I truly was. The ceremony was flawless. Willa looked stunning in her $8,000 dress, floating down the aisle like she was living out every fairy tale fantasy she had ever imagined. Arlo stood at the altar in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, his Irish accent making the traditional vows sound like poetry. I walked down the aisle as maid of honor, wearing the dusty rose dress Willa had chosen, playing my role to perfection. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to the marriage, I felt every eye in the room turn toward me for just a moment. I smiled serenely and said nothing. My objection would come later when it would matter most. During the cocktail hour, I mingled with guests, accepting condolences about my difficult situation and praise for being so mature about everything. Arlo's co-workers from his tech company were there, along with several people from the immigration office he had worked with on his visa paperwork. Willa's art school friends gushed about how romantic the whole story was, how it was like something out of a movie. "You're being so brave about this," one of Mom's friends whispered to me. "I don't know how you're handling it so well." "I believe everything happens for a reason," I replied. "Today feels like the perfect ending to this story." The reception began with dinner and speeches. Dad gave a toast about love finding a way. Mom cried through her speech about how proud she was of both her daughters, and Arlo's best man told charming stories about his loyalty and integrity. I listened to every word, knowing that in 30 minutes, the entire narrative would change forever. As the dinner plates were cleared away, Marcus announced that it was time for the first dance. Willa and Arlo took their positions in the center of the dance floor, her dress spreading around them like a perfect circle. The guests formed a ring around them, phones out and ready to capture the magical moment. "Before we begin," Marcus announced, "the bride and groom have a special surprise. Some dear friends who couldn't be here tonight wanted to share a message with the happy couple." I watched from my table as Willa and Arlo exchanged confused glances. This wasn't part of their plan, but they assumed it was a genuine surprise from friends. Willa shrugged and smiled, always ready for more attention and praise. The audio began playing through the crystal-clear sound system. At first, there was just the faint sound of movement, and then Arlo's voice filled the room, Irish accent and all. "She's going to be devastated." The guests looked puzzled. This didn't sound like a congratulatory message. Willa's smile faltered as she recognized her own voice responding. "She'll get over it. Vesper's practical. She'll understand that these things happen, that people can't help who they fall in love with." The color drained from Arlo's face as he realized what was happening. He started moving toward the DJ booth, but the crowd was too thick, and Marcus was following my instructions to let the entire recording play. "But her wedding is in 3 months. All those deposits, all that planning. Better now than after we're married and I'm stuck. Besides, this way I don't have to pretend anymore. Do you know how exhausting it is to act interested in someone who color codes her closet and has a 5-year plan written in a spreadsheet?" The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, and shocked exclamations filled the air as guests realized they were listening to the bride and groom discussing their betrayal of the maid of honor. Willa stood frozen in the center of the dance floor, her face white as her veil, while Arlo frantically tried to push through the crowd. "She always blames herself when things go wrong," Arlo's voice continued from the speakers. "Poor Vesper. She really thought she was getting her fairy tale ending. She'll find someone else eventually, someone boring enough to match her energy." Willa's eyes found mine across the room. I stood up slowly, smoothed my dress, and walked calmly to where she stood paralyzed on the dance floor. The audio was still playing, but I could see that everyone had heard enough. I looked directly into her eyes and said clearly so everyone could hear, "You're right, Willa. I did find someone better. I found myself." Then I turned and walked out, leaving them to face the consequences of their choices. The fallout was immediate and devastating. As I walked out of that reception hall, I could hear the chaos erupting behind me. Guests were shouting questions, Willa was sobbing, and Arlo was desperately trying to explain away what everyone had just heard. But there was no explaining away their own voices plotting my humiliation and mocking my heartbreak. I drove straight home and waited. Within an hour, my phone was exploding with calls and messages. Some family members were furious with me for ruining the wedding, while others were demanding to know if what they heard was real. I didn't answer any of them that night. I had said everything I needed to say. By Monday morning, the real consequences began rolling in. I had copies of the audio recording and documentation of everything else I had discovered. I contacted immigration services with my evidence of marriage fraud, including the recording where they explicitly discussed using marriage for his visa situation. Within 2 weeks, Arlo received notice that his case was under investigation. The wedding dress return was almost laughably easy. I walked into the bridal boutique Tuesday morning with the receipt and credit card information I had photographed. Since Arlo's name was on the card and I had all the documentation, the store processed the return without question. $8,000 went right back to his account, probably the first hint he got that I had been planning this much longer than he realized. Willa moved back in with our parents, claiming she was too traumatized to live alone. She told everyone who would listen that I had destroyed her life and that the recording was somehow taken out of context. But when pressed for details about what context could possibly justify their conversation, she had no answers. The marriage annulment came through 6 weeks later. With the evidence of fraud and the public nature of their deception, their lawyer advised them not to contest it. Willa signed the papers without even trying to fight, probably realizing that a legal battle would only expose more of their lies. Arlo's visa situation deteriorated rapidly. The investigation revealed that he had been planning the marriage fraud for months, and combined with the evidence I provided, his visa was revoked. He had 30 days to leave the country. He spent those 30 days trying to find another American woman to marry, but word had gotten around about what kind of person he really was. He flew back to Dublin alone. His dreams of American success crushed by his own greed and betrayal. The family dynamics shifted permanently. Dad surprised me by being completely supportive once he understood the full scope of what had happened. He told me privately that he had always felt something was off about the sudden romance, but hadn't wanted to cause problems. "I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself," he said. "That took real strength." Mom was a different story. She blamed me for months, claiming I had humiliated the family and destroyed Willa's happiness. It took her nearly a year to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, Willa and Arlo had brought their consequences on themselves. Even now, our relationship isn't the same, but I've made peace with that. I refuse to apologize for refusing to be a victim. Willa and I didn't speak for 8 months. When she finally reached out, it wasn't with an apology, but with a request for money to help her get back on her feet. I declined politely and suggested she find a job like everyone else. She's still angry with me, still playing the victim, but I've learned that some people never take responsibility for their actions. That's not my problem to solve. The extended family and friend reactions were mixed, but mostly supportive once they understood what had really happened. Several people told me they had suspected something was wrong with the rushed wedding, but hadn't wanted to interfere. Arlo's co-workers were particularly vocal about feeling deceived, since they had contributed to wedding gifts for what they now knew was a fraudulent marriage. What I learned from this experience changed my life completely. I discovered that I don't have to accept mistreatment just to keep peace in the family. I learned that strategic patience can be more powerful than emotional reactions. Most importantly, I learned that standing up for yourself isn't selfish or vindictive when you're protecting yourself from people who are actively trying to harm you. I'm not the same person who trusted blindly and always put others first. I still believe in kindness and family loyalty. But now I understand that those things have to be mutual. I won't set myself on fire to keep other people warm, and I won't let anyone steal my life and expect me to smile about it. 2 years later, I'm in a healthy relationship with someone who values honesty and would never dream of betraying my trust. I've learned to spot red flags early and trust my instincts when something feels wrong. The experience was devastating, but it taught me that I'm stronger than I ever imagined. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes it's refusing to let someone else's betrayal define your future and building something better than what they tried to steal. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Leave a comment about your own experiences with family betrayal or finding your strength. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real stories about overcoming life's biggest challenges.